Okay, hi everyone. My name is Nikoleta. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for allowing me to be of service. Thank you for inviting me. Um, Thank you for saying that. I paid him to say that. No, I didn't pay him to say that. I just wanted to be funny. I'm trying to break the ice because I am nervous. I am nervous. I'm always nervous about this stuff. Um, I hope I hope all of our serenity is improved after this hour. I just want to honor the name, Serenity Improvement. I was asked to share my story and I was reflecting on that. And like, I have one story. I just have one story. But you know what's interesting is that my perception of my story and my reflection regarding my story keeps changing. And that's one of the beauties of Alcoholics Anonymous and the experience I've had the privilege of having for the last 17 plus years is that even though I have only one story, it has deepened my view of my story and the lessons that I can learn from it in reflection. So I'm gonna try to share the facts and share with you my current perception of my story up until this point. And so don't hold me to it, even though this is being recorded, because it might change a year from now. And that's another beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what we're doing here and what we have a chance to do here is that it's fluid and it becomes fresh and it becomes new. And there's deeper layers for us to discover and uncover as we experience more awakening. Because at the end of the day, isn't that what this is about? You know, having had a spiritual awakening, as a result of a spiritual awakening, I get to show up. I get to really show up, like really show up here and now, like really be alive and feel alive, really be a part of. And I moved as a result of that spiritual awakening. The byproduct of it is to come from the heart. And the heart serves. That's what it does. It serves. It's not that I, Nikoleta, wants to serve others and carry the message and all that stuff. Is that the heart, once it wakes up, it just naturally moves like that. You know, I'd like to take credit for it and get the credit for it, but that would be the mind trying to own it, right? It's just something that happens naturally. I think that's what the book means by when it says, you know, at some point, God's will and our will aligns. Wow, God's will and my will aligns. That means that there's no more internal conflict. And internal conflict is what I constantly try to get away from, medicate, get relief from, escape, avoid. Before picking up a drink, and the whole time I was drinking. I'm 44 years old. I was born in Serbia, former Yugoslavia, in Belgrade. I would say over there, as Bill W. calls it, over there, across the pond, a big pond. You know, a little tidbit, my dad tried getting sober in the 70s and there was no Alcoholics Anonymous in AA. There was no AA in Belgrade at that time. So he white knuckled it for a couple of years, eventually picked up a drink and never stopped and died from this disease, not just with it, but from it, directly and indirectly as a result from it. And so how can I not be grateful that I've been given this gift? I get to walk into the rooms where we speak the language of the heart. We speak the language of powerlessness. There's an understanding. There's an understanding that I couldn't even get from my own self when I was drinking. Even I was confused by my inability to stop drinking. Do you guys remember that? Like just being completely baffled by the inability to stop drinking. Despite my own desire to not drink, despite the circumstances, consequences, reasons, wishes, needs, wants. I mean, that was just baffling to me. It was baffling. But I was born there and it's a, you know, I'd like to say it's an alcoholic country. There's a lot of drinking. Drinking is accepted. We drink. something in the culture is even more along the lines of, if you don't drink, you're not to be trusted. Like there's something wrong with you if you can't drink, And I was warned about alcoholism at a young age because of my dad, not just because of my dad, but because of my grandmother. My grandmother died in her 50s with a bottle in her hand. They used to say I'm just like her and I'm just like my dad. So maybe I picked up that gene. That's not why I'm an alcoholic. That's not what makes me an alcoholic. Because let me tell you, I have a sister and she's not one of us. That woman cannot even look at a drink. As a matter of fact, she forgets the drink that's placed in front of her. She takes a sip, she feels a little bit buzzed, a little nauseous, a little sleepy. She has a completely different experience than I do. She does not have the phenomenon of craving. She does not have the allergy of the body. She does not have the mental obsession, which qualifies me as an alcoholic. But, as long as I can remember, there was just an uncomfort, that uncomfort, like I was uncomfortable in my own skin. Like I would, twiddle with things and pick my nose and get distracted and focus on other things. And I tried to be anywhere else and in anybody else's story but my own. I got addicted to reading books at a young age, to the point where I would miss my bus stop and I would get lost because I had a book and I just, I would be in anybody else's story but my own. And, got addicted to sugar because that changed the way I felt. And I even tried, when I was young, I even stole a couple of times, but I got caught every time. So I realized that wasn't for me because I'm a really, really bad thief. I was shaking before even stealing. And then by the time I stole the chocolate bar, I was already caught just by the way I looked. So, so I gave up that career real fast. But, I just, in reflection, I see that there was discomfort. The book talks about we're restless, irritable, and discontent. I love those three words because they describe me to a T. I can't find better words to summarize the general internal feeling, the internal climate, the temperature that I'm experiencing as I'm perceiving the world. I just don't feel connected. And, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, I walked into a room. It was very dark. I could feel the tension. My dad was getting thrown out of the house. My mom was throwing him out. Her clog, flew at him. And then he was out and then the bottles were out. And I heard the clinking of the bottles down the garbage chute. And something in me registered that life was not safe. I already didn't feel safe, but I really didn't feel safe after that for whatever reason. So, and what I mean by that, I registered that life was not safe, or people can't be trusted, or people not reliable, that there was something scary about life, that life was tough. Life was tough and I didn't know how to live it. And so the next best thing was to pretend and to make sure that I did everything to give you a certain perception of who I was in order for me to get what I think I need, in summary. But, my parents divorced for the second time. My sister's from the first marriage. I'm from the second. As a child of a family that was riddled by alcoholism and gambling, obviously, even they, in their best thinking, thought that a new child would solve the issue. And, now I understand, the book says no human power can relieve us of our alcoholism, and in my story, in my dad's story, in my mom's story, I was that human power. The new baby will make things better. It will create change. I didn't know that back then. I didn't know that even while I was drinking. I didn't put the two and two together. It's only in reflection after being exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous in the 12 steps out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, can I look back at that and say, the wisdom. It's so evident in all of our personal stories. I think it's so important to personalize the wisdom that comes out of the big book. I think that's what makes it so timeless. It's timeless. It's because it's sharing some wisdom of life, not just about alcoholism, but how to move in life and what life is about. And when I was 14, I ended up in New York City. We came, me, my mom, and my sister, and through completely crazy circumstance, within 2 weeks, we were homeless. And, I was 14 years old. It was Christmas of 93 and in New York City. And for about 5 months, we were like living in abandoned buildings and squatting with strangers and you know, just trying to survive. So that reiterated even more this experience that I'm carrying, this like way I perceive life, the way I view things is life is not safe. Life can't be trusted. People are not trustworthy. People are not reliable. Life is scary. What does that breed? What it breed for me was fear. Fear and insecurity and a desire to manage life, to manage situations, to think about the next step, to always be in the future. Obviously, I'm also living a mind dominated life. I'm just like everything is perceived through the mind, and what the mind says is how life is, right? I don't know any better. So from 14 to 16, there was just a lot of just trying to survive. I, went to school. I did really, really good in school. They said I was really, really smart. I didn't think I was smart. The public high school in New York City was the equivalent of the third grade of elementary school in Serbia. I mean, I had like 15 subjects in elementary school in Serbia in the third grade, equivalent to what they were, teaching me in high school. So I think in comparison, just the educational system was not equal. But I graduated high school in 2 years, a valedictorian. I grew up fast in many ways externally. I worked hard. I worked multiple jobs to survive, for us to pay the bills. So that forced me to grow up. That forced me to be perceived as though I was more mature. And I did look more mature, but internally I was not grown up. Externally, I might have shown that, but internally I was not grown up. And by the time I was 16, I was living alone and supporting myself. At that time, I was working in a restaurant. I was always curious about booze. I had memories of watching dad drink and being like, and questioning like how come booze was so important to him. And I watched the ease that he had, an effect that alcohol produced for him. I saw it. I literally saw it with my own kid eyes. I remembered it. I watched him have ease and comfort when he was drinking. I watched him be restless and uncomfortable and impatient and intolerant and cranky and short when mom was not letting him drink or not allowing it. And I was curious about it. And because I was working in a restaurant, I was living alone, I was supporting myself, I had certain achievements, I gave myself permission to get my hands on a bottle. And I brought this bottle home alone. And so here is a 16-year-old girl in New York City by herself in her little studio apartment in Manhattan. I took a swig from that bottle of gin, and it was love. I mean, really, I will never forget the first time I drank. It left such an impression on me. It paused me. It paused me. The wheels of my mind just went down. They stopped spinning. Like I was paused. I fell in love. It was like a first kiss. I like wanted more. I don't remember much of that night. I don't know if the physical craving kicked in from the first bottle, but I drank from the bottle and I drank fast and I drank a lot and I wanted more. And that's where my love affair with alcohol really begins at the age of 16. And were there consequences and issues at 16 that I was experiencing at 25? No. 25, 26, 27, it got really, really dirty and it got really, really ugly and it progressively got worse, At some point, liquor, as the book says, ceased to be a luxury, became a necessity. It's something I needed to survive. I couldn't face life without it. I couldn't face people without it. And I can't say that it wasn't fun for some time. I can't say that. I was young. I was driven to succeed. I was incredibly ambitious. I was hardworking. By the time I was 19, I was financially successful. I was putting myself through college that I was paying for myself. I felt all of these external things um, made me feel like I had arrived. Kind of like I really relate to Bill's story when he says I had arrived. I remember the first time I read that, I related to it immediately. Like immediately, I know that feeling. I know what he means by that. I've experienced this. I've experienced this at a young age. As a matter of fact, I worked hard and I deserved to play hard. I earned my drinking and the freedom to make my own decisions and do whatever I want. I showed up every day. I was a good girl. I impressed people. I received raises and promotions. I traveled. I, like I felt that all of these externals would give me happiness. And they would like kind of like help me figure out who I am and what I am. But the truth is, I was so far from knowing who I am and what I am. And I didn't grow up in a religious household. Oh, it's my Christmas tonight. I'm Christian Orthodox by birth. It's my Christmas Eve tonight. Tomorrow is our Christmas. So, there wasn't much talk about God or anything like that. I had a religious experience when I was like 10 or 11 as a result of watching for the first time a movie about Jesus around Easter. It was like a 3-hour long documentary. And I just remember like I was crying for days. Like my heart broke wide open. I don't know what happened. I couldn't give it words. And I really didn't have anyone to validate it for me or anyone that I could talk to about it. But I like just wanted to become a nun. I was going to be a priest or a nun. I was going to devote my life to a monastery or to silence. I was like 11-year-old girl, 10, 11 or 12. And then like I, tried to be cool on the corner with the neighborhood kids. And I like, huffed glue for the first time and smoked my first cigarette. And then like I took on a new persona. I was cool. And I was smoking cigarettes, So that was just like, shoved. That was just like shoved to be forgotten. It can't be explained, so it will be forgotten. And then here I am in New York City by myself. I have all these achievements. I've done some stuff. I've gained some money. I've gained some status, and I am unhappy. I'm alone. I was experiencing that alcoholic loneliness way before my bottom. Before my bottom, there was like really an inability to form like deep and meaningful relationships that felt valuable because like, life was a game. And if life is a game, I'm playing chess. And if I'm playing chess, I'm always strategizing. And if I'm strategizing, it's coming from some kind of insecurity, and insecurity always comes from fear. I'm actually scared. I actually don't know how to show up in a real way. I actually don't know how to be really genuinely honest. I don't know what I really want. And so I pretend. So I did a lot of pretending, and life wasn't very fulfilling. And the external stuff that I was gaining wasn't really fulfilling that whole. In Buddhism, they have a picture of a hungry ghost. It's like it's got the beak of the mouth is like really wide open, but the stomach is cut off. So anything that enters just falls out. It's like insatiable. It never like gets satisfied, and I would never get satisfied. And alcohol was the great lubricant for that, for all of that, for all of those like insecurities. And I was exhausted from my mind. My first addiction, I would say, was addiction to thinking. Like I just never questioned my thoughts and my perception of life and myself and others, my prejudices, my ideas, what's possible, what's available. I really actually lived in a limited state of the mind. And, booze just eased that. It really did. And I don't know, somewhere in my 20s, the line got crossed in a very visible way. Consequences were more often. The truth is, those 10, 11 years that I drank in New York City by myself, I can't put the timeline together. It's a fog. It really is. It's really a fog. Like I can't figure out, when did I try to move to California, and when was I going to that therapist that I was like, sitting in the bathroom of the therapist's office drinking, vodka. and lying to him while paying him top dollar with my own money. Like, who does that? Like, we do that. Like, why did I do that? Like, who was I trying to do that for? You know, I remember the comments from friends, you know, who I thought drank like me, but they didn't drink like me because I was always the last Mohican standing who wanted to drink more and longer and faster and, you know, well into the morning. I remember the comments from partners that I was with, boyfriends that I've had, boyfriends that I've lost as a result of my drinking and embarrassing episodes and shameful episodes and my inability to stop drinking. So all of these things, I don't know how much they matter, is that I was baffled, I was confused by my own inability to stop. Yet the thought to not drink never entered my mind. Never. You know, my mind blamed outsiders, circumstances, people, my childhood, my family, my current situation. And blame is a major part of the major tool of the ego, right? I guess if anything's been learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, another gift of Alcoholics Anonymous and the growth that has occurred is that I'm no longer so much looking externally. I am looking internally. So that's another shift that occurred, right? Where prior to recovery, something on the outside was always a problem. Something on the outside needed to be changed and fixed. Now I look at, well, what's my part? What's my dance with this? How does this really feel? You know, this is something that Alcoholics Anonymous taught me. But anyway, I guess, you know, like bottoms would keep dropping. And I remember this, I'll never forget one of my favorite speakers say, you know, and I would keep furnishing them and invite you over. I would keep normalizing, you know, no matter how bad it would get, I would just normalize it. I would just normalize the pity and the shame and the regret and the remorse that certain situations brought upon me. You know, that would be just how life was then. And I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but that was the journey. And, you know, it couldn't have been any other way. It couldn't have been any other way until I was exhausted of trying to manage and control my life and my thinking, really, and my drinking, more importantly, my drinking. You know, at the end, I was a daily drinker. I was, when I hit my bottom, I was 6 months unemployed at that point, which is unheard of. It is the only 6 months in my Social Security history since the age of 14 that I have not been employed. And I have no recollection of those 6 months. Zero. In April, my boss gave me a letter warning me that I will lose my job if I continue to come to work drunk. By that time, in April, I already exhausted all the sick days, vacation days, whatever days, anything you get in a year. It was exhausted by April. And I was sending messengers at this multi-million-dollar company on Madison Avenue and 57th Street, where I was the head bookkeeper. I was sending the messengers out to the liquor store to buy me airplane bottles because I didn't understand the physical craving. Because I would go for a liquid lunch and I would come back and I would be thirsty. And I didn't know why I was so thirsty that I had to get more booze. I didn't understand the physical craving. I think this is such an important thing for us to talk about as alcoholics. As alcoholics, what qualifies us is the physical craving. What is my relationship with alcohol? What happens when alcohol enters my system? What happens? And that's what I needed to slow down when I came into AA. I knew that my relationship with alcohol was different. I knew it was different than the hard drinker. I knew it was different than the non-drinker. I knew it was different than an alcoholic. I just didn't know why it was different. I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I was so thirsty to drink more and more and more and more and more until I passed out. I was always insanely drunk. I drank until I passed out. That is not a way to live. At the end of my drinking, I was living on my floor. My whole stainless steel table was an ashtray. Not one piece of mail was opened for maybe 9 months. I couldn't leave the house. Everything was shut off. I was getting evicted for the 3rd time that year. I was having alcoholic seizures. How bad does it have to get? I'm a pretty smart girl. I can put 2 and 2 together. I worked in America since I was 14 years old, multiple jobs. I've never gotten fired. I've always gotten promoted. I can figure things out. I couldn't figure this. This thing had me stumped. And what a great position to be in as an alcoholic, because I'm stubborn and I want to be independent and I want to be in control. And, you know, like, I love how Bill talks about it. He goes, a tumbler full of gin and 6 bottles of beer. I would need to drink that in order to eat breakfast. The very next sentence in the book, he says, nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. He literally talks about, oh, if I'm not in control, not in power, when others are like flying off the towers of high finance, they're like all like killing themselves for the stock market crash of whatever, 1929 or something. He has a thought, you know, if I'm not in control, then death. That's the drive. The mental drive is for control. It's for security, because it's insecure. Because it knows deep down inside it doesn't have it. And so for me, who did not have, I want to say I didn't have a spiritual power in my life. God was present in my life my whole life. I didn't have eyes to see it. I was completely shut off. I was so distant. I was so out to lunch. I was so disconnected, and I was so loaded. It's in some small moments that I had an inkling, but I had like no way to relate to it. Not until you guys talked about it. You guys gave the words. You guys gave the hope. You guys were sober longer than me. This is why it's so important. You know, I'm like a big book, 12-step Nazi, but the longer I'm in sobriety, the more I realize, boy, is the fellowship important. Are the meetings important? Connection important? Our storytelling is so important because we remind each other, we bring each other back home. We share the hope with each other. We are the message of the big book, the way we live. That's the practical application of step work, is how I live, how I show up. And so I think the journey's really been, you know, where what I was like before is that it was heavily mind-dominated life. And I lived from the neck up. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's like heart-dominated life or spiritually dominated life or something other than the mind-dominated life. And I live more from the neck down. Or at least I make it, you know, I do my best. And there are certain things that, like, where I used to get paused occasionally, you know, I got paused occasionally with certain events in my life and certain moments, especially in early recovery with the help of my sponsor. Now the pause is a part of my life. It's like naturally present. I sense it. I acknowledge the God, the spirit, that presence that's here. I constantly try to give that attention. And trust that that can motivate my life and that can inform my life. September 14, 2006, under the influence of alcohol, I tried to end my life. I'm not a end my life kind of girl, not with all the things I've been through. And so that was the final solution. I only shared that because all other solutions failed. I failed at all other ways of controlling and managing my drinking. Everything. Therapy. I actually even went to Alcoholics Anonymous in New York, but I came late. I had whiskey in my Snapple bottle. You said the word God. I ran away. That was it. I went to another one. I was loaded. I was sat in the back. It was like midnight. Some biker guy kept slamming on some book, kept talking about some big book. I walked out of there. I was like, I wonder if I can get this damn book in a Barnes and Noble. What book is he talking about? But I wasn't willing and vulnerable enough yet to ask for help or to ask somebody. I did feel safe in the room. Something in me registered that, but I just wasn't ready. I haven't exhausted all of my ways. But on September 14, 2006, all of those ways were exhausted. And I tried to end my life. And for the first time in my life, I said an honest prayer. And the prayer was, I can't do this anymore and I can't stop drinking. And it was a clear statement, I can't stop drinking. And that was the experience. You see, powerlessness, it's an experience. It's not an intellectual understanding, it's an experience. We have to experience step one. Those 11 years of drinking was step one. All of my life is step one with the tangible result of alcohol. Alcohol was the first tangible thing that showed me actually how powerless I am. I'm powerless over my mind. I'm powerless over my thoughts. I'm powerless over people. I'm powerless over the snow that's dropping in New Jersey. I'm powerless if this computer's going to die any second. I'm completely like, but the booze, I didn't want to drink and I drank. I had every reason not to drink and I drank. I really thought that I could drink like a lady, but I never did. I really thought I could only drink for a happy hour, but I never did. And so it brought me to this pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization that was like a way of life. It wasn't like an experience, occasional experience. At the end, it was a state of being, really. It was really a state of being. What was motivating it? The spiritual condition. Didn't really understand what that meant, but I'll tell you, I put myself through college. I was in college for 6 years full time, and because I kept changing my major, but I finally settled on philosophy because I worked during the day and I went to class at night drunk. And I did my thesis proving that there is no God. And I got to tell you, it's the most important relationship in my life today. It is the most important relationship in my life today. That's how out to lunch I was. That's how loving the Creator is. That I can write a thesis, 50 pages in my own words, that he doesn't exist, while absolutely existing. But I was broken open, and I called my sister and I asked for help. And this is where the journey of Alcoholics Anonymous really begins for me. And something magical happened that night under the influence of alcohol as I tried to end my life, as I experienced complete brokenness and exhaustion. I think it was really the exhaustion of the mind, really. The mental obsession has been removed. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I cannot believe it. It's been 17 years, guys. I cannot believe it. I have not drank yet. And I say yet. And that humbles me. That split second on September 14, 2006, a girl that couldn't keep the bottle down, I was 27 years old, having seizures. Full-blown alcoholism. Couldn't live without it. Couldn't imagine life without it. The mental obsession was removed. Step one experience was like, I had like this conclusion of step one, so to speak. I relate to Bill's story when he says, no words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in the bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched all around me. I mean, that's my experience. I feel it in my body when I read those words every single time for 17 years. And so to go into the emotional memory of my last time drinking, I think it's really important. I think it's really, really important to get in touch with that pain, especially the further I am from it. Because something magical happened. Something entered my heart, miraculous entered my heart, and accomplished the miraculous that I can't to this day verbalize, and to this day I want to honor. And to this day it makes me feel gratitude. Feel it. And it's been motivating me ever since. And Kevin said, a great speaker said once, and I love that statement, come all the way in and sit all the way down. And that's my story in Alcoholics Anonymous. And everything was given to me. I locked myself up for 4 months in a treatment center that I didn't want to leave. They kept trying to get rid of me because they said, I'm ready to leave because I don't want to leave. And I kept saying, I don't want to leave. I'm going to drink. I didn't have the mental obsession, but I knew that I was going to drink because step 1 says you will drink. Not that you can drink, you will drink. When we understand step 1, it means there's absolutely nothing I can do about it, and I have no idea when it's coming. Suddenly, how fast is suddenly? I work in the business. Do you know how many 20 years sober, 15 years sober, 25 years sober, 12 years sober, 18 years sober people go through my sober living as newcomers? And how many have buried? They couldn't believe that for 25 years they were sober, and then for 4 years they couldn't put it down, and then I went to their funeral. What I get to see is unbelievable. I get to see alcoholism in 2,000 human beings. And you know what I see? I see the same thing. We suffer from one alcoholism. It's not my alcoholism or your alcoholism. It moves the same way. It looks for the same stuff. It's looking for relief from this internal climate, this internal condition, because I feel so disconnected, because I'm living in the head. And the book points to it over and over again. The problem centers in the mind. Self-manifested in various ways is what defeated me. First of all, we have to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work. It even tells me, it's like, don't worry about answering it. I'll tell you right off the bat. I'll make it real simple for you. Why you shouldn't play God? Because it doesn't work. How do I know it doesn't work? Because it hasn't in my personal life. And maybe I've done some 4th and 5th steps to see that. So to see how the manifestations of self has defeated me. How have they defeated me? How have they stood in the way of me being connected to my heart and being moved by something other than the mind, other than insecurity, other than fear? And boy, it's like every step, it rises us. It rises the level of consciousness. It deepens our awareness. It broadens our view. And I feel like that's what happened. Step 1 set the base, the foundation of the house. It planted really, really strong roots. And now I know what they mean. You got a problem with any other step, you got a problem with step 1. There's something in you, consciously or not, that still thinks you can drink successfully one day. You think you can have a relationship with booze one day. And I think that's what they mean with our reservations need to be smashed. We can't have any reservations. That's no plan for the future. I cannot drink for good and for all. Never. I can never successfully drink, period. Never. Never means never. If I can never grow legs, I'm legless. I'm plugless. And so to feel that, the byproduct of that is absolute humility and a willingness to listen and come all the way in and sit all the way down. And that's been my experience. I came all the way in like a deer in headlights with fear in my eyes, not knowing the solution, and listening really intently, even though I had no idea what you guys were talking about. And it was kind of weird, and nobody talks like that, rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence. I mean, come on, guys. I was like, what are they talking about? But I believed my sponsor. She was safe. She radiated. She had a glow in her eyes. She was my Ebby. Man, Abby comes to 12-step Bill and leaves an impression on a guy who's drinking. He leaves an impression on him. Bill can't help it but get curious about this God thing that Abby's talking about. I wanted more. And, I've been so lucky. I was locked up for 4 months, and then they recommended a sober house in New Jersey. I'm still there. I work there now, guys. I don't live there for 17 years. I did live there for first 7. And 2 days later, I met my sponsor. And I remember telling her from the payphone, I didn't have a cell phone, so I called her from the payphone in the sober house and I said, I have doubt. And she paused and she said, doubt, doubt. And my mind was just blown away. And I was like, oh my God, this is like having like a, like a Buddha, like at my disposal, like a phone call away. I have like Buddha on like a speed dial. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I would call her up from that payphone. I'd be like, I'm having the best day. And she'll be like, why? Is everything going your way? And like, boom, I would get paused, mind blown. I'm like, oh, is how I feel conditional that everything goes my way? Can I be okay if things are not going my way? Oh, you know, I would call her up and say, I can't do these gratitude lists. They're like go forever because like I can't, like everywhere I look, everything I think of, good, bad, ugly, past, the pillow, the bed, the bunk bed I'm on, like everything. I was grateful because it didn't matter the things. It was that I was in gratitude. Gratitude was looking at the things. It was even looking at losing everything from a place of gratitude. It's to look from a place of gratitude. It wasn't that I was grateful for the object, is that I was grateful. And that gratitude, everything it saw, everything it thought about, everything reflected on, saw it from that perspective. How can I be that? How can I be gratitude? How can I drop from the neck down? How can I come from the heart? When do I realize that I'm not awake? If I'm having a spiritual awakening by the time I finish the work in the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening implies that my spirit's been asleep. And then I have these experiences of a girl who does not believe in God and who set out to prove that there is no God. And I have a sponsor who's brought to me as a result of Alcoholics Anonymous and the byproduct of my willingness because of my surrender of step 1. And she goes, let's step into the unknown. And I'm again blown away. Let's just step into the unknown. And why was I willing to step into the unknown in step 2 and be willing to have a relationship with this mystery in step 3 and to proceed? Because my life depended on it. And my life depended on it because of step 1 experience. I need to be beaten into a state of reasonableness. Alcohol is the great persuader. It is my master. I had been overwhelmed. I got checkmated. That is the most important experience of my alcoholism, the one that I'm most grateful for, that came with such pain. I call it fierce grace. We call it grace. I call that experience fierce grace, because it's in the midst of pain and loss and grief and like loneliness that another door opened. Not of my doing. And then, of course, the 4th and 5th step like completely shifts me around to go from looking outside to looking inside. Look this way. How does this feel? Not what I think about it. How does this feel? Not what I think about it. Okay, Nikoleta, you're right. What now? Do you want to be free? How does it feel? And by the way, when I'm right, it still doesn't feel good. And like, I'm right. But it doesn't feel good, right? If you ask yourself, well, how do you feel now? You still don't feel kind of free. I mean, I don't know about you. I can get off on being right for a minute or 2 or an hour or half a day or whatever. And then at some point, it just feels empty. But when we like it was a journey to the heart. I don't know, like the heart woke up. I don't know what happened. You know what? I don't know what happened. It was like spiritual surgery that built some spiritual fortitude in my life, where I went from wanting to be free to wanting to be free from being free. Like I didn't even need to be free. I didn't need to ask God for anything. Your will, not mine, be done. It's like all is welcome. I say yes to life. It is not a mistake I'm here. There's a higher purpose to it. There's a meaning to it. I'm one of many. I can't see the big picture now. My mind is limited. My view is limited, but my heart is not. It senses. It senses the preciousness of each moment. Alcoholics Anonymous brought me to a place of discovering the present moment. And in the present moment, having fresh experiences. I mean, I am still curious, and I'm still like excited 17 years in. I think that was like one of the things I was afraid of. Like, after you read the big book to a sponsee, like the 227th time, you know what I mean? You're like, I still see things that are new in here because I've had a new experience or a different experience, or those words mean something different to me. I have been talking forever and I'm like only on like step 3. But you know what my mind said at like 7:40? I like texted Brenda and I was like, and I'm thinking in my head, an hour. I got to speak for an hour. But I just warmed up, guys, and I got to wrap this up in like 5 minutes. And, like, I'm sorry you're going to miss all the good stuff of like steps 9, 10 of all my sobriety. No, I'm kidding. It's all sobriety because my perception of it is different. If I shared my story with you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, some of these ways that I see these events and these things wouldn't have been from this perspective. They just wouldn't. But that initial dance with the steps, for me, there was an innocence to it. There was a broad highway. It truly is a broad highway. All inclusive, never exclusive, open to anyone. It truly is. Just come as you are with all your old ideas and prejudices and beliefs, and you'll feel safe and welcome. And that's what I had an experience of. And I'm grateful that my sponsor was willing to tell me the truth about how much trouble I was in and how sick I was, and that this thing I have is not going away. And that through each step, I had an experience that empowered me and made me curious about the next and created the willingness, empowered that willingness even more for the next step. And, I remember coming out of the first fifth step, and I was just in shock. I really was paused by the fifth step. The experience of fifth step was really tremendous for me. It's an experience you can't miss. It is a vital step, life-giving step, really. I can totally see why, because something shifted. Something shifted. My recovery suddenly was no longer about just not drinking and counting days. It really became like this, there was a depth of like understanding about what alcoholism is, that alcoholism was in me, not in the bottle. It really tangibly made me understand how bottle is just a symptom, and how my perceptions and how I relate to the world, my view of the world, my unwillingness to question my old ideas is what stood in the way and created certain experiences for me that I needed relief from. If I'm doing good, living life, why the hell do I need to check out? Why do I need to check out? Why do I got to get loaded? The tightness in me of resentment and anger and bitterness and blame and shame and worry and discontent and disconnect and all of these experiences all start with a story in the mind. And everything was up for review. The fourth step was everything was up for review. And the beauty of it is that the first fourth step, everything was blamed on the drinking, but not the second fourth step. Get a few years under your belt. You old timers know what I'm talking about. Man, those are painful. Those are painful. Second, fourth step and third, fourth step, when you got like 10 years sober and you're like, you're driven by delusion and like, wants as opposed to needs. But yet there's something so freeing about being given this, like, seeing how valuable truth is and experiencing how truth sets us free. Truth sets us free. The truth I tell myself. Emotional sobriety. Rigorous honesty with me. There's nothing more delusional than me believing my own lies and trying to convince you of them. And so Alcoholics Anonymous helped me grow up, really. It helped me grow up. And, I just got to the 5th step, but, I had incredible experience as a result of the amends. I did it because my life depended on it. I did it because I loved my sponsor and she asked me to do it. I utilized whatever motivated me to do it, what I needed to do, until I had my own experiences with them that motivated me to do more when I experienced the freedom as a result of it. And it's true, 9 out of 10 times the unexpected happened. And there was some incredible things that happened as a result of that. And then the big ones for me have been 10, 11, and 12. 10, 11, and 12 was all about sitting with myself in silence. Still, being still. Being still and paying attention to the space between the thoughts. Being here and now, being present. And really allowing everything to be as it is, having no argument with life, including the difficult things, including when my dad died prematurely, including when he left, including when that didn't work out, including when life was just life. I get to travel lighter through life as a result of being connected to my heart and having this higher power working in my life. And the 12th step has been the most sacred step, because anything I couldn't see, anything I didn't realize, any blind spots I had were really revealed to me as a result of working with others. And they really like filled my heart up, and they continue to do so. And that's just the most incredible thing in the world. It's really like it comes full circle. It really does full circle. And it's 9:00 p.m. And it's over. I think I just stopped sweating in this moment because it's 9 p.m. Thank you for letting me share. And I love you.